I know I'm at fault. The first time ever, I spoke to a survivor. I picked up my phone. This was a survivor of sextortion. The first thing he said, Ma'am, I know I'm at fault. I need help. We tried to help. I spoke to the second survivor. The same sentence. Spoke to the third, the fourth, the fifth. I'm at fault. I know I'm at fault, but I need help. The repeated, their shame and their embarrassment was so palpable. And every time this repeated phrase just compelled me, just made me think about, are we talking about sextortion enough in the country? In a country where shame, embarrassment in the society, you get it like this. I wanted to tell all the people I was speaking to, the survivors, no, you were not at fault. I couldn't at that time, they had too much to share with me. But this stage today, and I was thinking, what do I say in a TED talk? What is it that I can say so that I impress the audience? And then I realized I don't have to. It's not a topic. It's not an issue that we all need to get impressed with. It's a topic that we all need to talk about and break the silence about it. The embarrassment and the stigma that is attached with sextortion is so huge that it has become life-threatening today. The irony is that for a crime like sextortion, the predators are preying on two factors, trust and vulnerability. I trusted somebody, I fell in love, I shared some content, and then I'm being blackmailed on it. So what is sextortion? Sextortion is online blackmail, and in exchange, you are being asked for either money, more explicit content, or some other extra favors. That's what sextortion is. A very recent survey, closer to home, done by Snapchat, where they felt that 71% of the Gen Z, the teens, they said that they have been approached by predators and they knew that this was a extortion fraud that they're getting into. Unfortunately, 55% of them fell victim to sextortion. 55%, that is half of your millennial generation who is a victim of sextortion. Half, more than half. And that is why we all need to, in this room, be talking about it, break that silence, get away from the embarrassment and the stigma that it comes with. What exactly is happening in sextortion? We might feel that it's happening in the dark rooms, it's happening through the dark web, but no, it's happening in plain sight. Right there, maybe people sitting next to you. It's happening in absolutely plain sight and we are not able to control it. The scale has become industrial today. The volume, the number of cases registered by the government are not the right numbers. And I can tell you because every day on my mobile phone, I get at least 5 calls where people are trying to have this conversation, gathering this courage to talk to me and tell me that this has happened with me, what do I do? And they again repeat the phrase, I know I was at fault. The reality of sextortion is that with the coming in of I mean, technology absolutely got us a mess, but it is also technology which can get us out of the mess. We were looking at job scams, we were looking at dating online, we were looking at deepfake profiles. In job scams, students, the young professionals who are being reached out to by the predators and telling them and having a job interview, that's how the modus operandi is, that I want to interview for a background check. During the background check, the conversations move from just professional conversations to other mediums of social media, and then there was explicit content shared between the one who was looking for a job and the one who was offering. In dating sites, many young professionals And largely, the ones I've been working with, trying to help them, are men. Many young professionals who were lonely in the spaces they were in tried to have that conversation with somebody they found online without even realizing that the person they were talking to wasn't even real. These are fake profiles, bot profiles, deep fake profiles. So while we were only now struggling with the crimes that humans were creating and troubling us with, AI came in. You're not even required in that situation. So my picture, my video would be created and I would be blackmailed even if I wasn't in that situation. That video wasn't my real self. And I will still be blackmailed. And why will I pay up? This is why I will pay up. They told me that I'll be recorded. A doctor, and this is an old case, when a doctor was reached out to by a young girl asking for help for her ailing mother. The doctor went out, helped the ailing mother. The girl had a conversation with the doctor. They got into a relationship. The doctor and the girl, while they were sharing an intimate moment, two people barge into their room, start clicking the pictures of the doctor, create a video of the doctor. He did reach out to the police, he did report. Not much help was provided. The doctor committed suicide. So we cannot really say that only the foolish ones are getting victimized by cybercrime or are just the victims of sextortion. And this is why you pay up. These are so petty conversations that the predators are having. They groom you in a way that you are not even able to realize at that point, what are we really getting into? What is this conversation relating to? The online dating scams specifically, the young ones sitting in the room here, you know what I'm really talking about. The swipe right and the swipe left culture that we have gotten into, the battle of loneliness that we are battling at our front, which get us to explore the world which is of the digital spaces, which is the social media. And it is not a bad world out there. But the only thing that that put us in trouble today. And while I was speaking with the survivors, I was doing some key informant interviews with the media personals. I completed one of the surveys in India, that was Sextortion in India, where I spoke to people, I spoke to young users, many of them were survivors. Around half of the victims of sextortion, they did not report the incident. They did not seek help. The number one reason, social embarrassment. One of the survivors did. The doctor also did go to the police station, filed a complaint. What happened? No resolution given. We need to understand that the problem of the internet or my intimate image or a video going out is the virality. It's the social embarrassment that it will bring to me. And the knee-jerk reaction. This also the survivors told me that the knee-jerk reaction when I tried seeking help or when I tried reaching out to somebody I trusted was, why were you so foolish to send across a nude video of yours, to send across a nude image, or to send across your image to somebody you did not know? This is as misguided as you were walking on the road with a wallet in your pocket. You gave a key to your friend to protect your house when you were not in the house. The friend robs your house. Now, what's the crime? Giving the key or the robbery? You decide for yourself. And you think about it when somebody is reaching out to you, then you think about it. Your knee-jerk reactions, they either fill the survivors with encouragement or boost their confidence that they can talk about it, or there is somebody to help, or they will take them 2 steps back. No, there is nobody here to help me. Nobody will understand me. So it's also upon us as society, as civil society, as tech people, as policy holders, everybody in this room, we need to be very careful when somebody is seeking help, and especially with a very dangerous with these critical situations which cybercrime emerges. What is your first reaction to the person? Very, very extremely important. Do victims trust the reporting tools? Now, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, Meta, everybody, they do have the reporting tools. You can go out and report. What happens? What am I expecting if I'm a victim? What am I expecting if I go and report, and if I'm in a situation where I'm being extorted? Right now in this moment, I go to report, and if for the next 5 days I do not get a response, every minute my video and my picture is being circulated I don't know how many times. Now, can we all close our eyes and imagine the moment of panic the survivors of extortion are living in every second of their lives? Nobody responds to them. The platform doesn't get back to them soon. They cannot go to the police stations. They do not go to the police stations. Most of them, they do not go to the police stations. The sensitization at times is missing. The capacities are missing to handle cases of extortion. This is also a cross-jurisdictional issue. You are being extorted by somebody, you are in India, but the person is sitting in Magnolia or Cambodia or somewhere else. There are a lot of things that we need to do. And I wanted to apologize for my passion when I talk about extortion, but I cannot. When I speak with the survivors, all the time it breaks my heart that I also, as a person who's been working on it, I do not have a solution with me at the moment. Most of the times they speak to me for 1 hour, for 2 hours, and they keep apologizing to me. I am taking your time, I'm sorry, I am at fault. These are the repeated phrases that I'm hearing. The fault is all of ours as a society. There is lack of policy, that the law doesn't support us at the moment, and the capacity building of the police officials at the moment is something that we all really, really need to work around to deal with such a critical issue. This is something that the survivors have told me, again, repeatedly. I see this pattern every time I'm speaking with them. I did report, but I did not get a response. These are the challenges that I've already spoken about. I started with my talk talking about breaking the silence, break that stigma, get away from embarrassment. Easier said than done. And why should all of you in the room believe me? Why should all of you be listening to me? Why should you be believing me? Because I know in a moment of abuse and sexual abuse, when a survivor talks, I exactly know how it feels, and I exactly know the situation. When there is nobody here to help you in that situation, I understand the panic. I've realized it myself. The day I spoke about it was the day I felt I was the most powerful person who can talk about it. And now when I speak with the survivors, my agenda is no matter what happens, I have to help. I pick up their calls every day. They can call me at night. They have my personal numbers. I will not pick up the calls of my family, but they are the ones I will never miss out on. Because I understand how it feels like when there is nobody to talk to. And all of us in the room need to become that person. We need to realize that all of us in the room should be those people who people can reach out to, the young ones especially can reach out to if they are facing an issue like sextortion. Zero tolerance policies about all of this. In universities, in schools, in organizations, companies, corporates, NGOs, wherever. Zero tolerance is something that we all need to talk about. There is absolutely no workaround on this. We need an absolutely clear law talking about sextortion. I'm not saying that there are not laws out there. There is, but we still are working around extortion. And then online blackmailing. We club the laws and then we are trying to provide protection to the victims at the moment. The Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita did recognize that sextortion. They've listed down many certain terms, they bring out the jargon, where they have included sextortion. In India, the only state talking clearly about sextortion is the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Under the RPC, the Rambir Penal Code, they have clearly talked about sextortion. But we still there needs to be a discourse. There needs to be a discourse in every university, in every school, in every corporate, and all of us need to put together our force to tell everybody, this was not your fault. The embarrassment will only go away if all of us start supporting the victim. And that support just doesn't come with words. You have to really feel it. The victims of sextortion, they trusted somebody. They loved somebody. The fault was of the predator and not the victims. At the national level, at that scale, what we really need is a large-scale national discussion around it, policy, people who are working on the ground, and the most important voices of the survivors included. What exactly do they need? You and I cannot decide about it. They need to be in the room. And then you will build a robust policy framework, and then you bring in the law. This is a little bit of work that we did in Suraksha AI, where we are trying to put together a lot of verified information and data, which was at the time missing, because some of the survivors, they also told me that when they tried, some of the friends directed them to certain links and resources to report, which were again fraudulent sites. And hence, verified information is something that we all need to have. The change in the narrative from I know I'm at fault to I am not at fault is what we all have to work together on. In tech spaces, we need to use, with the coming in of artificial intelligence, the crimes like deepfakes, sextortion, they are turbocharged. You were already dealing with the volume which we were even at national level, we were not able to handle. And now with these turbocharged systems, the scale is massive. The first time ever Indian media talked about sextortion very recently was 2024, when they realized that a large group of young men from Karnataka were taken to Cambodia, were being put in cyber slavery rooms. Now you can all imagine, these were cyber slavery rooms where these young men were put, and they were made to execute and call up 1,500 people every day. Businessmen, these profiles that people had, that the predators had taken out the data. They were calling 1,500 people every day and trying to sextort them. And these young men themselves were victims of trafficking. The crime is multi-layered, it is cross-jurisdictional, and that's the reason we all need to think about it, talk about it again and again. But my only request, if 0.5% of my passion is delivered today, the next time you see anybody coming to you for help, next time you see anybody in distress or dealing with, especially in cybercrime cases, any sort of these cases, make sure the support you are providing to them, or make sure the first sentence that you're telling them is absolutely very, very careful. Because that is something that will decide their journey from being victims to the survivors. I thank you. It's about time. And I think I pretty much finished on time. I can talk about it for 24 hours, 48 hours, and 72 hours. But thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. And together we need your support to deal with this. Thank you.